So everybody, somone here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Welcome to another one of Amons Debunks. So I was just saying some of my thoughts on YouTubers' videos on God of Ragnarok. And I've not been one of the people to go and come out and talk about my full open opinion about God of Ragnarok. I already stated a little bit in case of my likeness for the game, but for people who have not seen that or are new here, I probably like the game. I like it a lot. I don't think there's too many form problems that really degrade it, or in the words of someone Osiris, is a critique in disguise. I'm planning to go and pick that video and not make a response depending on the case of how I feel like about it, especially since this video is 2:30. It's something seconds long. And no respect to those people that I'm talking about with this being said, so a little bit case of the yawn, a little bit tired after going eating. I just want to go and say, with this being said, I don't mean any respect to these people or anything like that I might talk about or make response videos to. It's just in the case of me speaking my own opinion, especially after finish the game, taking a look at it again, especially in my second playthrough, as you see what is in case of armor and peeking about different things about the game at different points, and overall just re-looking about how this game is like to me. Like I just said, I like it a lot. This is the game of 2022 for me, and as I speak, I'm playing Elden Ring, and when the time comes for me to go ahead and showcase that, especially after these points in between while I'm playing the game, I will go ahead and showcase you guys the footage of that. Or if I don't mess with the game as much or care for it as much, I'm not gonna go ahead and stray and backpedal from the case of me playing it or anything, right? And showing it to you guys more is just in the case if I really full like it, I will showcase it or show different fun clips for fun, or whatever the case. I will talk about that later on. I do plan to make a video on if God of Ragnarok is better, or pitting both games against each other, talking about which game does this good, which game does that good, what makes them good. And no disrespect to the Elden Ring fans or anything like that. I don't think the game did not deserve to get Game of the Year, especially from what I'm playing. I can see why people would think that. It's just me personally, this was the Game of the Year for me. This is the game that I fuck with. This is the game that I like. This is the game that I was most anticipated for. And this is the game that I saved my money and I did everything to get to an extent. So I'm happy to go ahead and say that I officially played this game and I loved it and I fuck with it. But when it comes down to this video and what I'm doing when it comes down to the YouTuber in question is obviously making a response video and in depthly talking about why I don't like what he said about it, and not even like in a hate sense. I just disagree with it. Probably go ahead and show this out to the person if they want to go get a second opinion. With that being said, but I mean this in all form of respect. I just don't agree with some form how the person talks about stuff. I feel like he's ignorant in certain instances of the reasoning for why things are like that. And sorry if someone was calling me. Some moms have notes. I'll say I'll talk to her later. But again, it's just me spreading my opinion in the form of for why the person says what he says. I hope you guys will enjoy. Let's go ahead and get into it.
I can't find the time, you can't find the time, maybe we should quit joking. I can't stay the same, I can't play a game, I am fresh at the tokens. I will follow you to hand it back, but lately I don't know where you're going. It's a different direction. I am sick of finessing, just to get some love, for the sake of us. Really I'm the plug, really I'm your drug, but you don't take enough for me, vitamin D. I'm too old to play hide and seek. I can't find you or your closet freak. Where my girl at? Yeah, I love you so much. I've been putting in these hours, everything is for us. I've been living pretty quick, I've been moving in a rush, but that is not a reason for you giving up. I miss the small things, like just laying on your lap. When you would say that I'm too skinny, I would say that that's too fat. Trying to get you out my mind, well my heart is where you're at. I think you'll be there forever, like a tattoo on my back. There used to be emotion, now we just floating in the ocean. Like, do I even get you wet? Are you just going through the motions? I'm drinking whiskey only straight, I'm taking shots like it's a potion. I thought I was the only one, when did I get a demotion? I never been to Las Vegas, but I've been fearing and loathing. I cannot wear the shirt you bought me, because I feel you in my clothing. And when I try to go to sleep, memories keep my eyes open. You can't even say a word, I think.
Now for the YouTuber I'm talking about in Pacific, his name is Gammelier. He has 547 subscribers, 7 videos, joined April 16, 2018, and has 27,869 views. That's cool. I like his profile picture. See, again, no hate, nothing like that. I'm not even saying that to go and sway away anything I'm talking about. I fuck with his shit. I hope him the best, you know what I'm saying? I mess with the form for how he did stuff, right? But in the same sense, for how he talked about some things I don't agree with. So I'm gonna go and play his video here and there in between. Hopefully he's the type of person not to go ahead and pin him or anything, but we already know what happened last time where I reacted slash debunked somebody's claims in the sense of my opinion and tried making an argument against, aka bitch nigga was over here trying to put down my video and at the same time disregard the foundation of what I was saying and treating it like I'm over here slanderizing his name and taking his stuff for views. To make this clear, in case he does see this, that is not what I'm doing. If you do try to go ahead and abuse the copyright claim, for the record, I'm going to go ahead and have something for you. So please do not try it for your own sake. And I say respectfully with no threat. And please do try to be like that person that I am referencing. I'm saying with my Chess King called 19100 that will go ahead and go out his way to go ahead and abuse the copyright claim and pull a fresh and fit or some dumb motherfucker shit. I'm just saying, for the record, for your own sake, and for the troubles of this just being a normal, common case of talking, especially since my stuff follows under free use, with that being said. But still, I go ahead and talk about it. He made these 3 different videos talking about God of Ragnarok and why it has some writing problems. This is a flawed story. Now, to go again, for the record, no repetition, to go ahead and put back to the point of what I was saying before a different point, before I had to go talk about getting into it and obviously the intro, and tell me if y'all think that's a little bit too long, by the way, as well, was obviously, yes, I love the game, I rock with it, dope case stuff. There's some things I wish could be better, which is why I give it a 8.5 to 9.5 out of 10. There's some guys that could be better put in, there's some that showcase a story that can be put in, there's maybe some things that could happen a little bit more better. I think overall, characters, side quests, all things coming together and crammed together was solid. I messed with the characters, and this game was stellar to me. There's some things that could have been changed, right? But I don't think it was bad. I don't agree with the most general consistency of it. I can understand why some things are not the best formed together in this instance, but there's a lot of people saying some shit about this game that is not realistic to me, like Zeros, Captain Cuba. I don't agree with some of the stuff that he says because I feel like it's either foul ignorance or him not taking the best understanding of why the game is the way it is, because he's just trying to go ahead and state it as one simple thing and not full in-depthly talking about it. That's just an honest review with no script, no setup or anything, and I have a little patch of notes to go and talk about this as I speak, but it's just simply not a really overarching thinking sense of talk, in my opinion, because he didn't really take an understanding of why some of this stuff here and there in the game is the way it is, or paid attention, in my opinion. I feel like he just couldn't be bothered to get an understanding of some things that happened in the game because it wasn't as action filled or picked up and busting as much. And in some cases I can understand, especially with Anger Boda and Atreus, even though I like that part of the plot slash story in the normal sense, it's not really something that needed to be there as much. That shit took way too long to full in-depth talk about. I think the boss fight with Anger Boda's grandmother is dope. I think all the talk that they have, I think their character development, I think the normal consensus, the normal project, the normal projection of the story part of that is good. It has a cool beat, it has a cool feel, and it's a cool depthness, and it explains the status of the relationship good. I rock with it. But it's kind of reaches a point where it's just boring, and that's reasonable. It being boring because it doesn't pick up in different places, I don't agree with that. But not to sway too much off of the purpose at hand, what we're talking about. I'm going to go and react to his stuff, and you guys will see the different cut points when I have something to say here and there and all that. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it with his first video. God of Ragnarok has story problems. Seems reasonable, but within a time 26. Let's pull it fully up because from the notes, yeah, 26 minutes and 1 second, so not a big deal from the point that I had. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into it.
You disappoint me. Not very wise.
God of War Ragnarok, developed by Sony Santa Monica Studios and directed by Eric Williams, has become the fastest-selling PlayStation game of all time, earning many industry awards and currently sitting at a 94% on Metacritic. Many have called it a masterpiece, and it will surely go down as one of the best games of all time. Then again, only time will tell. After all, the original release of The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for the Nintendo Wii in 2011 has a 93% on Metacritic. A game that, when remastered for the Nintendo Switch in 2021, announced as part of its advertising campaign that the motion controls were now optional. That your chatterbox puzzle ruiner of a companion feed could be ignored, and hilariously demonstrated in the trailer itself that the game would no longer explain to you what a rupee is every time you loaded your save file. A masterpiece. As a huge fan of the original God of War trilogy and an even huger fan of the 2018 reboot, I anticipated God of War Ragnarok to be a dunk so slammed that it would shatter the backboard of my expectations. Not only does God of War Ragnarok flub the dunk, it airballs the free throw. I'll put it in blunt terms. I got beef with God of War Ragnarok. Getting gay! Yay! I'm not going to go over every single nitpick I have with Ragnarok's narrative, or else we'd be here all day. So instead I'll narrow it down to 5 key screenwriting concepts, which are narrative imperative, narrative function, knowledge gaps, dialectical order, and South Park. Yes, that's South Park. Just trust me on this. I'll explain it when we get there. Like and subscribe, I guess. The backstory leading up to Ragnarok is long, complicated, and, well, awesome. But to reduce...
I want to go and get to the actual beat of the video. Let's talk about his actual purpose of making this, because all of this is just lining up to it. And I've obviously watched the lineup until I want to actually get to some points that I disagree with, because obviously I'm not going to fake like I'm a person just reacting to this and having a new form. It's been a miss. I watched the 2 other parts of it because obviously just released it now, and I wanted to go ahead full study up on the game. It's something that they said to get my personal grasp of it, and at the same time set up actual critique, you know what I'm saying, not just some blatant bullshit. But to actually go and get to the story beat, here we go, right now let's open sequence.
Be perfectly honest, a lot of it is disposable. Like this guy. You know who this guy is? We don't need to talk about this guy, because he serves no narrative function. He's just there to take up screen time, which sadly is a criticism that applies to a lot of God of War Ragnarok.
To be fair, this is true. This is something that is not needed in the sense for this scene. He's a random dude just came out of nowhere, had the most dramatic death scene, so there is a point. But I think it was just supposed to get you ingrained into the sacrifices of what makes Vanaheim strong in this case, at least in their fighting force, because they're outnumbered 10-1 by Asgard's units most likely. Forgot the name. I have a video put together. I'm gonna be doing a Power Slam video. Who will win God of War's Greek Pantheon or the Greek War's Norse Pantheon? What was the name? I'm thinking the Valhallian Warriors. I don't know what I'm talking about. The white skin motherfuckers. The opposite version of Kratos, from being a candy cane to being, I don't fucking know, fucking chocolate bar insides. Joke aside, on the road, these dudes outnumber them, and it shows what stacks them in comparison, in the case of being fighting force, in comparison all at one. You know what I mean? So that's pretty much the entire and only reason it's even set up like that in comparison.
God of War Ragnarok opens with Fimbulwinter, the years-long blizzard that precedes Ragnarok, in full swing. Kratos looks at the pouch that held Faye's ashes in the first game. Atreus walks in with a deer, a clear callback to his inability to hunt one at the beginning of God of War 4, which, sure, I hope he could bag a deer by now. Then, on their way home, they're attacked by Freya. As mentioned before, Kratos killed her son Baldur at the climax of God of War 4 to save her own life. He does so knowing that revenge cannot lead to fulfillment.
This path you walk, vengeance, you will find no peace.
Solemn lesson.
I know.
And, as he would have had to fight Baldur to the death regardless, he'd rather get it done now while Freya, whom he considers a friend, is still alive in this world. Freya, understandably, swore revenge against Kratos for murdering her child, but the specific reason why she attacks at the start of God of War Ragnarok is because.
That's not actually true. It is explained that she's went back to go ahead and try to hurt them / kill Kratos in Pacific. She could not do it because Kratos is too strong realistically, power swing wise and just common sense wise. Let's see, Atreus is with him, so he has a partner to go and back him up partially, even though he's never been able to do anything. It's mainly somebody that's been Kratos, and this is even more relying shown within the start because the character Kratos is able to do stuff from the player's control, so you're in flux into a better showcasing of what Kratos can do. So possibly every time she has win, just by the assumption she's never been able to do that much, and now he's really doing something that put her off because she ain't attack him until another point. So I mean, hypothetically, this actually did a number on her. I don't know, but obviously, like any form of plot, it's plot relevance that it's this booming to the point to do it. But again, to reiterate, it's borderline shown that she has tried to multiple times and she's never been able to get to Kratos and do anything, or they have a magical barrier that locks other people out, and this is even shown for why he's able to get to this point and Freya doesn't just come after him, because realistically she should be able to try to go ahead and get past that and come after them technically. If that did not happen, if that was not something stated, then okay, yeah, it's kind of because of that, but it's not true that it's because with Baldur it's a more insinuated solemn reasoning. It's simply just because of the fact that she could not go and find them, and every time she did try to go and find them and did, she could never do anything to them.
Later dialogue reveals that Freya has attacked Kratos and Atreus repeatedly over the 3 years between games. This is just the latest failed attempt on Kratos' life, who refuses to fight back because, again, he considers Freya a friend. Questionable choices there. At home, Atreus puts his sick wolf Fenrir down, which is sad because dogs, and goes off to bury the body. Kratos dreams about his late wife Faye, which is a very unnecessary scene, no matter how much I love Deborah Ann Woll.
I would disagree because it shows the bond between Kratos and Faye, especially since this is his wife, and if you have played the other God of War games, I'm not trying to take away the fact that he has, and possibly has, because of him obviously making a whole section of the video talking about a God of War trilogy. He seemed like an avid gamer, seems possibly like a peak gamer, so I don't know, but I mean, it's supposed to show the type of sense of bond that he has with somebody that you would say is his significant other, because of the fact the last time he had one, he killed her on accident. So I would disagree with that. Maybe it might be a little bit too long, maybe it's too early, but it's reasonable, especially showing the stakes and all sense of what Kratos is fighting for. I feel like it's good to cling to the character's motives, especially when you're trying to be invested into them. Especially someone like me, who at a time, and at least in the past, to some extent, kind of did not like Kratos and his character because I couldn't feel nothing for him. And I'm not going to be one of the people to say Kratos is boring, don't have that much, and I already explained this in my own video. I've already explained my goal and the purpose of what I said in multiple other videos, but simply put, I think Kratos in the past can be better properly pushed and developed. I just think now he's a lot more fleshly formed into a character and brought together full solemnly, especially in the frontier point that he's being right now as a guardian, protector, being a person that has a better soul overarching purpose, and not the senses of being rage incarnate, which could be interesting. I mean, remember, my favorite character in Marvel is Hulk, but there's a lot more deep dive into his character than just that, you know what I'm saying? But besides that,
Well, and I do love Deborah Ann Woll. When Kratos wakes up, he finds Atreus is yet to return from burying Fenrir. Kratos goes looking for him, discovers that a bear knocked down one of their magical trees of protection, fights the bear, and oh my gosh, it's Atreus. I like this scene. I was genuinely shocked that Kratos was beating his own son to a pulp. I mean, look at the pain on that bear's face. And this seems to set up the central conflict. Kratos' isolationism versus Atreus' wish to get involved. To some extent, this kind of is the central conflict, but we'll dive into that spaghetti mess much later. Atreus then marks a new tree of protection, and they head back home where the story begins in earnest as Thor and Odin arrive at Kratos' doorstep. Another callback to God of War 4 and Baldur's visit. Odin makes Kratos an offer: absolution for killing Magni, Modi, and Baldur, a peace treaty to prevent Ragnarok, and he'll even stop Freya's attacks to help sweeten the pot. In return, Atreus must stop searching for the Norse God of War Tyr, who was believed dead in the previous game. Kratos, clearly surprised that Atreus had been hiding something from him, rejects Odin's offer. Odin takes it in stride. Thor and Kratos fight to a stalemate, which is admittedly really fucking rad. And it's also kind of funny how they argue over parenting methods, since Magni and Modi were terrible godly beings.
Modi sought us in fear of you. He died of the wounds you gave him. Oh, we got a model father.
Kill clash.
This gives Odin the opportunity to speak to Atreus alone and off camera, which is a choice. If you think it's weird that such an important conversation would happen off screen, this is due to the unbroken one-shot cinematic style of the Norse saga God of Wars. There are no cutaways, transitions, or breaks. It's one long, unbroken take like those scenes in Children of Men or Kill Bill. We can't see what Atreus and Odin are talking about because we're busy swapping parenting tips with Thor. This didn't bother me in God of War 4 because our two protagonists, Kratos and Atreus, were together for most of the runtime, and Atreus was comatose when they were split up. Nothing happened on his end that Kratos would need to be aware of. A big twist in Ragnarok is that Atreus is a playable character for like half the game. Mechanically, that's all well and good. Atreus' more agile, long-range focused moveset is a refreshing change of pace compared to the much slower, stodgier Kratos. I also love his Max Payne-style bullet time dives. I did that over and over just to do it. It was fun. But in respect to story structure, this is a big problem, as one side of the story will either come to a halt as we play out the other side, or important conversations will take place off-screen, like Odin and Atreus in the opening, or much later when Atreus becomes friends with Thor's daughter Thrud, and he, off-screen mind you, tries to convince her how manipulative and cruel her grandfather Odin is.
That's not true. That shit going correct. He stood up tall when saying it, and this was in Helheim where he tried convincing her. It didn't work because, in true, he is being a hypocrite because you're blatantly helping somebody that's bad in the sense, and he's doing it for his own reasons. It's going to deceive him, and he's trying to go ahead and change the mindset of somebody that is the granddaughter to the Allfather, has been a part of this family tree, and has a love and care possibly for what the family stands for in the sense. So she's not going to just divert her whole ideals to do it. And he's possibly tried more than once, but he showcases how he wants to do it. And he tries doing it honestly. He tries doing it in a reasonable form of a conversation. But she doesn't change it because, again, she's the granddaughter to him. This is the Allfather. He is the most powerful Norse god in comparison. At least if we're talking the same sort of Aesir, you know. Technically might have some arguments. Somebody maybe like Surtur or some other characters might be more powerful than Tickbit. But overall, his take of being powerful and the reasoning that he has brought into her mind as the granddaughter, especially he's able to fucking puppet control her father. She wouldn't just put off everything that he is to her just because one person says something, especially in say regard for the Aesir. Their version of the history and the actual truth is way different. It's like in real life where the history that you feel is your time would be more accurate than the time of somebody else, because this is from your point of view. This is your people's point of view. This is your ground of life and understanding, not theirs. Okay, so you're going to be proud purpose on your thing than the form of what another race, or in the sentence another case of people, are like. Because simply put, Asgard, aka the Aesir, are better than the Jotunar, aka people in Jotunheim, in the same sense. So it's just simply, you know, her place of projection, perception of things being more in the play of being right than the purpose at hand, what they're being. You know, your proud purpose is going to be at hand of what's good than that. And eventually he gets through to her. So I feel like it ties together very well and lines good on the structure, on the story from beat to beat in comparison.
This conversation thread back up while controlling Atreus, with Thrud saying she's not convinced by his accusations. And doesn't that sound like a conversation that we, the audience, should have been a part of? I sure would have liked to have seen how Thrud reacted when Atreus told her the Patriarch of Asgard was considered a war criminal in the other 8 realms. Maybe this was
Cap. He did say that. I don't know if he wasn't playing that part and skipped or something, because that doesn't make sense. I don't know how that's possible. Like, no offense, get a brown lamp and just spark that into your mind. Like, I don't know how you don't see that. That was a thing. There's different clips shown, and possibly to my editing I'll show a piece of that if this video doesn't get too long, because I have a big long ass clip that's being showcased on the screen as you see now. What is being said, it's just like, it's weird. I'm sure my stuff going. Sorry, it's just, I don't understand how you don't see where that was or how it was like in conversation, because I did. It's simple.
An optional conversation you can have while controlling Atreus, and if it was, I missed it. But I also consider optional conversations as separate from the main narrative. If they were important, then they wouldn't have been optional, right? When Kratos returns home, he confronts Atreus about hiding things from him, but agrees to follow Atreus to the dwarven realm of Svartalheim, where he believes Tyr is imprisoned. Thus concludes the opening sequence of God of War Ragnarok, which brings me to my first issue, the narrative imperative, which, besides sounding like an Andy Dwyer band name, boils down to one essential question. Why does this story have to happen to this character in this moment? The choice of when to begin a story should not be an arbitrary one. Rather, it ought to be tied to the specifics of the protagonist's original state of being. It is at this moment, not a month ago, not a year from now, but right now when their story begins. In God of War 4, the answer to the narrative imperative is very simple, because Kratos chops down the last tree marked with his wife's handprint, which is literally the first act in the game. It's later revealed that the trees created an illusion of sorts that hid Kratos' presence from the Norse gods, which is why Baldur comes knocking on their door shortly afterwards. There's a very direct line from chopping down a tree to Baldur arriving at their house. Now, for God of War Ragnarok, there's a couple answers you might give for the narrative imperative, such as, because Ragnarok's about to start. Fimbulwinter's been going on for 3 years after all, so Ragnarok must surely be around the corner, right? But no. The way Ragnarok works in this story is it will only start when those involved choose to start it. Odin himself says as much when he proposes peace.
How does peace strike the esteemed, retired God of War? How about we just don't kill each other? How about you stay home, kick up your feet, seek no quarrel with me, and I'll have none with you.
Had everyone decided to stay home, like Odin suggests, Ragnarok would never begin. I'm sure someone can point out, oh, not true, fate would interfere to start Ragnarok anyway.
That's not necessarily true. It's not a case involving just fate. It's just the essence of what makes the calling for it the case. Now, he is right. In a plot sense, no, would not happen, but that's even a thing in the original Norse myths, so yeah, that's true. It wouldn't full coming together in that technical way, but it wouldn't take away the step into new ground with Ragnarok. It wouldn't take away the sense of the plot all around, and that doesn't change anything for me personally, so that's why I disagree. Like, yeah, it would have happened in a better or case of a technical turn away, good way from what should have happened, right, as a plot forming thing, but you could equate that with all case stuff in all form of mythology, especially this is God of War and it has basis to the mythologies or folklore for what it's making itself off of, but it doesn't necessarily obviously is what it is. It just doesn't make sense to me to take that and then make that be how the story's going to be by itself, because at the end of the day it needs to happen because point A to point B, that's how all form of plots are. Even if it's not Sonic Fate rated, how is that gonna stain how it is bad? You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it, it doesn't feel like fate, but the point of fate as a concept in the case of this game is simply it's set up in the way that you make it be. Everything holds tied to how you're gonna be because it is needed, not because that's the whole stage, the whole setup of the game. That's the whole purpose, that's the whole plot, that's the whole point A to point B. I'm just confused on how that's coming into your mind, in my opinion. That just doesn't make sense. It's not realistic to me, technically. But anyway, besides that, keep going.
They're apparently 80 fucking years old. And yes, I get that, but also, that's not the choice the writers made. They chose to set it up so that Ragnarok only begins when the horn of Gjallarhorn, it's very hard to pronounce, the horn of Gjallarhorn is blown, which would only happen if someone took it from Heimdall, as he worked from...
That's not true in the fate of God of War, and at the same time fate of Ragnarok. The prophecy said when a person in Pacific is Heimdall, in a sense, in comparison to mythology, blows Gjallarhorn, which is the spark of Ragnarok. That is more of like the signation that it's happening, not necessarily by the staple that that is what it is. Because technically, if they could get into Asgard without needing to call for Gjallarhorn, they would need to go ahead and be able to start Ragnarok rather than there by any means. But they did this because, one, in the plot, which correlates to how everything is made up, sparks and rumbles Ragnarok into play. They open up all doors of the realms. All the 9 realms is called into action. They all run up on Asgard and want the smoke. They want to run the ones. This is just being a calling to all the realms that in some way has been affected and overlooked by Odin, the Allfather, that is snobby, not caring, narcissistic, and is privileged in comparison. And in this case, everybody would have a place to go and not like. So I feel like it ties in together. In the case, in comparison to Norse mythology, you know, again, Ragnarok fully needed to be sparked because of the fact that, you know, the end calling of the gods in the sense of our heroes need to happen. But in this is aligned together solemnly. There's a solemn sense of story about the calling of all the enemies to our villains coming together and fighting together. It works perfectly, in my opinion. I feel like it's a solemn story and represents what makes God of War what it is. A fight with the gods, a cool setup story for the most part, fighting against them, and, you know, it's good. It's not bad. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really see how that is. I can understand if, for the plot sense of it, it only happens because someone like Kratos robs it from Heimdall, but considerably at the same instance with how any form of a Greek god or even Norse god would die in a type of prolific form of ideal sense for how they die. Like, for instance, Zeus dies by the hand of his own son, Kratos, which is a fated thing and prophesied and perceived as a thing that was going to happen no matter the case in Greek mythology and in this. And Greek mythology doesn't happen because obviously Greek mythology would never expand long enough for that to come into play. And that would not happen, especially Zeus would prevent that by swallowing his own wife with her being water. Greek mythology is fucking crazy. But in this, Kratos eventually does. This didn't have to happen by Kratos. This could have been by anybody. But in God of War, it changes from the sense of it being the half-brother to Athena, in the same instance, to being solely someone by any accord of Kratos killing someone like Zeus. So that's why I feel like, even though, yes, again, it is only happening because this happens, it's set up to be the case by any means. In Norse mythology, it's more set on this person because there isn't breaks in the setup of Norse mythology. Because this is God of War, shit is supposed to change. It's not supposed to be accurate. And I know that's not what he's arguing. I'm only using it as an example because, simply put, the game changes to make it be good in the form of the setup of the story. So that's the only reason why it's put together like that, because, simply put, you need to set up a story beat that will project and proceed on with what you're trying to make it be. So I'm just saying, in comparison to Greek mythology, I don't think it's bad that, again, it's not someone like a brother indirectly to Athena, the same from a family or half-brother sense of Kratos. But if he comes in and he just stands and then point, this happened, and it's chaired in your face, what makes this stuff boom together, I think it works. He took Gjallarhorn from Heimdall after Heimdall dying. Gjallarhorn's purpose and Heimdall's purpose of being, in his own words, the, I forgot this now as I speak, the herald to Ragnarok, being the person that sparks the means for what Ragnarok is and fights in Ragnarok, comes into play. And instead of him calling to the 9 realms to come and face Asgard, it's his weaponry / his case of what he stood for being stanked into what makes the game as a whole good, and I feel like makes the entire journey and bringing of the characters together good. Because, simply put, if you take in consideration that this game is all about fate, prophecy, what makes you you, and what makes this and this needed, it correlates together good. So I just don't agree with that type of statement because it's simply just not realistic. It doesn't make sense to me. And all around, it's about making stuff happen because it needs to. It wasn't just because someone needed to take Gallahorn. It's because what made the purpose of making that spark of the Nine Realms call happen in the first place. You know what I mean? I don't want to go off hands with these. I just don't agree with that all around. So put.
Is blown, which would only happen if someone took it from Heimdall, as he works from Odin and he's not going to blow it otherwise. So no, it's not because Ragnarok's about to start. What about...
That's not true. He works for Odin, yes. Nothing would happen from Odin's calling for that to happen, but nothing needs to be beckoned from Odin's lips for that to happen. Again, to reiterate, in comparison to Norse mythology, it is the stain of the entire plot in that book / the mythology that if Ragnarok were to happen, his call from his horn Gallahorn, that boom tubes, his loud ass sings to call in all the Nine Realms for the reckoning of destruction of Ragnarok to come, he would do that realistically in the same place. Kratos just took it and used it for his own means that pours together the pitch of the plot line that sparked that to be the case here now. That's it. That's the only difference. It's just a cut differentiation on the role of who calls it. And instead of it being Heimdall that's faded, in this sense it's his weapon / tool to do stuff, it stands sense it's his own thing. You know what I'm saying? That correlates to good of Kratos, what I mean. It's just a plot device such opening for new means in a sense. No pun intended.
Because Odin and Thor arrive at Kratos' house. Now, this is a bit better of a guess, but let me ask you this. Why do Odin and Thor arrive at Kratos' house in this moment?
I could explain that, and it's kind of suddenly insinuated, and again, it could be better explained. I could agree on that, but simply put, Thor and Odin come because obviously it's plot, but it's also because of the fact that they come because Asgard's time is different from Midgard's time. Midgard is Earth in comparison. Asgard is pretty much its own Earth. It's just different in comparison. So their time works different. Their time of knowing is different. And Thor didn't know. And it's also because even if time doesn't work that much ridiculously different, even though in Jotunheim this man Atreus was gone for 2 days. So by the time they found out about Magni, Modi, and Baldur's death was probably, I don't fucking know, to them eons. But by the time that happened, they didn't know where he was, so it took them this long to come and find them. And you don't know how long Baldur, Magni, and Modi were in Asgard for. You don't know how long it took them to go and do what they had to do. So hypothetically, it wouldn't necessarily be wrong to take consideration. You know what I mean? And this isn't like coming at him and saying the talk of the topic itself.
Let's go back to that tree Atreus marked, because something really bothers me about it. Kratos and Atreus continue to mark trees with golden handprints in this game, but why? They don't create an illusion anymore, not really, since the Norse gods already know of their existence and know exactly where they live. Unlike Baldur, who only arrived after the last tree was cut down and therefore became aware of their presence, Odin and Thor come a-calling regardless. Atreus even points this out.
We haven't seen the last of Odin or Thor. And clearly they can just walk in and blast holes in our home whenever they want.
I think the real reason for this scene is because the hand-painted trees were such an iconic image from the first game, they had to be referenced to in the second game, which is not a good reason to put anything in your story. So if
I don't really agree with that. It's supposed to be imagery of what makes Faye so important and a calling to it. I don't really see that. But
if Thor don't arrive because the magical barrier is broken, then why do they? I got it, because Atreus turned into a bear. While turning into a bear does symbolize Atreus' inability to control his own emotions, and he did knock over a magic tree while in bear form, we just established that the trees weren't all that effective at keeping Odin and Thor away. And unless I missed it, Atreus' ability to shapeshift never really factors into any of his interactions with Odin throughout the script. So, no, it's not because Atreus turns into a bear. The answer to the narrative imperative that kicks off the entire story of God of War Ragnarok is because...
You equate that with any form of plot, but it's not truly because there's an actual form of reason. It might not be hypothetical because again, that's a lot more. I don't really think this is like a full objective, full case thing, but you can maybe say it's not the most in-depth, solid, down to definement form of writing for everything, but it's more just the cause that makes things work. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really think there needs to be an in-depth reason for why Gjallarhorn works for whoever has it and not just Heimdall. I don't think there needs to be an in-depth reason just for somehow Thor and Odin finding Kratos in them. Like, obviously, it helps. It provides reasonable case of answer, and it sheds light on a sense of the impact that will come from them, but they were gonna find Kratos regardless. It's shown in the post-credits scene / the technical full ending of God of War 4 that this man Thor was gonna come here. So it's not unexpected, it's not random, it's not dumb, especially not to me. And I think in a regard to him finding Kratos makes sense. It times together so perfectly beyond comprehension, because simply put, it's one, karma in comparison to Kratos. You know, fuck with my family, you're gonna get dealt with. And in the case of him coming in tied within it, it's mostly just him having to face somebody that's counterpart to him. And Thor is a guy that people have been wanting Kratos to fight even before Norse mythology has been a thing. The entire case of Kratos is killing gods at the end of the day. And when you hear him trying to fight somebody like Thor, who's a beast in his own way, makes the whole type of form of battle something beastier than what it already could be. We got the God of War versus the God of Thunder, the burly God of Thunder facing the Candy Cane himself. It's a funny fight, and at the same time a cool ass fight. You know what I'm saying? It's banger. So I don't really see it. I'm not trying to take away good writing choice. I'm not trying to disregard that. I'm not saying it because it works for what it is. You should just rationalize it. But I feel like it's a little bit of a stretch to have that be the main pick at and a custom of what makes the story what it is. Me personally.
Is because, like Freya's random attack before it, there's no direct action that Kratos or Atreus take to cause Odin and Thor to visit, which is when the alarm bells started to go off in my head. Events were happening, but unlike the excellent setup for God of War 4, they weren't happening for concrete reasons. This concerned me. To skip ahead a bit, Kratos and Atreus do find Tyr, the imprisoned Norse god of war, though long years of torture at Odin's hand made him lose the taste for battle. He's a sworn pacifist, refuses to lead an army into Ragnarok, and has no answers for Atreus on what to do next. The team return to the Holger brothers, Brock and Sindri's house. Brock and Sindri are a pair of dwarven blacksmiths who, in God of War 4, used to work together but separated due to their vastly different personalities.
Even though he's a slovenly liberal and I'm a fastidious conservative, I smell a sitcom!
Sindri is an uptight germaphobe, Brock as crass as it gets. But over the course of God of War 4, they realize they're able to accomplish much more together than apart, and that they just plain miss each other's company. It's nice. Brock and Sindri are essentially glorified upgrade menus that provide the occasional knick-knack or doodad to help move the story along. Like a quiver of arrows made from mistletoe that become much more significant later in the story. While I never really laughed at any of Brock and Sindri's jokes, I also didn't mind them, though I guess Sony Santa Monica Studios loved Brock enough to refer to him as the family dog, which we'll get to. At Brock and Sindri's, the group contemplate their next steps as they don't have a clear idea of what to do next. Which brings me to my next issue I have with God of War Ragnarok, South Park. Okay, so the concept really isn't South Park, but a method of storytelling that Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators of South Park, utilize.
Found out this really simple rule that maybe you guys have all heard before, but we can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words "and then" belong between those beats, what should happen between every beat that you've written down is either the word "therefore" or "but." You come up with an idea and it's like, okay, this happens, right? And then this happens. No. It should be this happens, and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens.
Put more formally, this is...
Yeah, I get that. But that's the main case of plot for a lot of things. I'm not saying this because it is, means that it's critically good. It's just I don't think that really crunches the story by the tongue and drags it down. I think it kind of puts away some mainline in-depthness or stain of grade A writing, possibly, for some things. Not in the game, but in the case of anything, right? Because in the game, in saying, for instance, Angraboda's part of the story, when he goes to Jotunheim on accident, this for this picks at that, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that by definition, because that didn't need to happen. Angraboda could have came in on some futuristic shit and just played her part on some like opposite form character development shit, but she still holds a great deal of coolness and a rack of cool depthness that stains its coolness for what it is, you know what I'm saying? And it doesn't pull back on the grander sense and stuff that makes it what it is, you know what I'm saying? It still is what it is. This happening does not take away the trade for something else good to happen, you know? That's just how I see it. That's how I feel about it all around.
Put more formally, this is the single cause and event pathway, which is A leads to B, which leads to C, and so on all the way to Z. This is the spine of the story, and if you don't have a spine, or you have too many spines, your story will fall apart.
Like him then, elaborate
Let's
on that a little more.
sequence real quick. Kratos chops down a tree. Therefore, he creates a funeral pyre for his late wife to carry her ashes to the highest mountain. But he is afraid his son is too weak for the journey. Therefore, he makes Atreus hunt a deer to prove his mettle, but a troll takes the deer, therefore they fight the troll. But Atreus flies into an uncontrollable rage, therefore Kratos says he's not ready, and they go home. But Baldur shows up, therefore Kratos says they must take the journey whether Atreus is ready or not.
And I wasn't ready.
You are not. You have no choice now.
So you see how that's one long, unbroken pathway of cause and effect, all stemming from the first action of chopping down a tree. Now, let's take a look at God of War Ragnarok's opening sequence. Kratos sits in a cave, and then Atreus comes in with a deer. Therefore, they go home, and then Freya attacks. And then Atreus puts Fenrir down. Therefore, he goes off to bury the body. And then Kratos goes to sleep. Therefore, he has a dream about Faye. And then Kratos wakes up to find Atreus isn't home yet. Therefore, he goes out to search for him, but is attacked by a bear. Therefore, he fights the bear. But the bear turns out to be Atreus. Therefore, Kratos says they will take no risks and they return home. And then Odin and Thor arrive to offer peace, but Kratos says no. Therefore, Thor attacks Kratos. And then Kratos comes home. Therefore, he confronts Atreus about keeping secrets. And then Kratos and Atreus go off to find Tyr. That last one could be a but if I was feeling generous. When you break it down like that, it's...
I don't really see how it's super bad though, cause I mean it's just simple. So it kind of gets a little bit too much. I can maybe understand that, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily take away the main story concept, the main thing that makes story good, and doesn't wrench the story again by the tongue in this expression in a bad sense. It maybe might downform straight A line of the story beat. But how in the conception of going from this to this and then but and then all that shit raise a bar to a bad extent, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it takes away anything good, and I don't think it downgrades or ups it. It's just simple. Like, I feel like that's a simple stance to the storytelling, and I don't think it puts down the general count of what makes what the story and everything else how it is what it is. You know what I mean?
That last one could be a but if I was feeling generous. When you break it down like that, it's no wonder I really like the fight with Bear Atreus, because it's the only sequence in the opening that is an unbroken cause and effect pathway. The rest is a series of and-thens, with the occasional therefore or but sprinkled throughout. And believe me when I say this, that the entire game is structured this way. The lack of unbroken cause and effect pathways makes God of War Ragnarok's plot feel disconnected and unmotivated. Like,
I wouldn't say every case of a game is like this, but in the sense of how, it kind of takes away, like he just said, straight through is something. Because even if, let's say, hypothetically, the game has a great majority where it's entirely like that, I don't see, like I just said, why it's bad. I think if we just try structuring full push through it, it will project something good all around, even if it has something weird going on about it, and it's not entirely just bad like that. I just really don't see that, and I feel like that's a very dumb thing to say, in my opinion, because if you have something like this as a story, and it's set up like this, and it keeps going through, and it has some things that bring you back in a good solid way, I don't see how that's bad. I just don't. I don't see how that's bad any form of the way, and all around, I mess with it all around. Because it's simple, it sheds the characters solemnly, and overall, I like it, and it's not bad. So, that's how I see it all around.
Ragnarok's plot feels disconnected and unmotivated. Like when Atreus lies down to sleep and then, through absolutely no action of his own, is magically transported to Ironwood, the secret hiding place of the giants. What? Quick aside, I actually didn't mind the Ironwood sequence like a lot of other people. I liked that Angrboda uses bright, colorful paints to fight monsters with, and that Atreus gets to hang out with another person his own age for once. And I think the main reason I like Ironwood is because it follows a single cause and effect pathway. One where Atreus learns his father is destined to die, but can't handle the revelation, therefore he turns into a raging wolf, but with the help of Angrboda he learns to control his emotions. Therefore he is now able to shapeshift at will. It's really neat, I like it. I didn't think it was bad. At one point I wondered when the actual story would begin, took a look at my save file and saw that I had been playing for 15 hours already! 15 hours of and-thens of disconnected sequences, capped by returning to Sindri's house of an endless parade of side characters who have very little to no narrative function, like Ingrid. Do you know who Ingrid is? Ingrid is a sword that hangs out in Odin's office.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just cut this here because this doesn't matter. Like, obviously, you're not gonna get nothing from Ingrid truly as an overarchingly big character, but Ingrid is supposed to be referenced for the sword that can fight by itself in Norse mythology. For the nerds in Norse mythology, it's supposed to be something to look at if you know about that. It ties together with Freyr for his capabilities, power scaling wise, what he can do, and all around the take of what he's able to do as a fighter in a fighting sense, because that is important when it comes down to Ragnarok, and it's cool, and it gives Atreus a technical companion, and it's something cool in the form of gameplay wise, having a sword that can fight by itself and doing a dynamic, dope anime type of sense, shit that Ingrid can do is cool to me. So that's how I feel when it comes down to Ingrid. We're gonna skip over because this video is getting pretty long, and the overarching concept of what these side characters are supposed to be is supposed to be just people you can look at for Norse mythology, if you know about Norse mythology. And I know not everybody came to God of War entirely from mythology thing, unless you were super big nerds of God of War and you came for the form of the history of God of War ingrained within Norse or Greek mythology originally, or you were big fans of Greek Norse mythology, where the case, and God of War just built that up to a new stance because of its world in these mythologies in this case. Because again, no one came to God of War mainline about that considerably, I would say, hypothetically. But if you came for that and this brought that out, that brings a touch of that likeness, because simply it's just that, something that ties to maybe somebody's likeness of mythology. So I don't know, it doesn't really matter in the main sense of what he's talking about. It doesn't matter to me, but I want to go ahead and see what he's talking about with the message to the creator.
So what narrative function did Freyr or Ingrid serve? Were they solely a means to warp everyone to safety at the end? What insight did they bring to Kratos and Atreus' journey? What even is Kratos and Atreus' journey, which, more on that later. Hello! You might be able to tell from the change of clothes, but this is not part of the video. I hope you've enjoyed what has now become part 1 of my God of War Ragnarok video, and believe it or not, I have about 40 minutes left of stuff to say about this game. This is only my 4th video, and I've just dived right into the deep end. I've made the hard decision to break this up into parts because the amount of effort I put into this video is a lot, and I work a full-time job and I have 2 little kids, so I don't have a lot of spare time. So instead of delaying this for another month or maybe more, I've decided to break it into parts and release part 1. Like I said, I
understand that. It's not important to the video. Well, one, I respect your time, I respect your effort. Even if I don't agree with it, I understand the talks. In the case we're talking about, I'm going to cut this half of the video. I'm going to look at its 2 other parts. If there's anything big I have to say, I'm going to go ahead and deep talk about it in the rest of the technical 5.5 minutes that we have with this being said. And sorry, I had some in my throat. Pause. Simply put it all together and pair all these different things together as a full conclusion, the purpose I have for what I'm talking about. But I just want to say for the record, I respect what you did, I just disagree with it. Okay, so to go and summarize his overarching points in this case, even though I agree with all of them, especially with the Barracuda thing in comparison to Finding Nemo or fuck Heimdall. Heimdall can only see for the cases of a person's mindset, but can't see what they're exactly going to do with it. He can see, for instance, a comparison to the TMT doctor, whoever that could read a person's mind. He could see what you're going to do with something, but not how you're going to set it up or line up entirely in the time point. And I get that the fight is not mostly a form of something that's super interesting, even with a very inanimate sense of power, but it's still something that compacts together, at least in my opinion, good story beat, structure, combat sense, and it's cool all around to me. With that being said, his overarching points and stuff does not make sense to me overall, because it's more of the subjective stake evolving what should be put together, which is not bad, but in comparison to Thor's build-up, he felt this way from being depressed and different stuff, and he chalks up his way to feel better to this being a dumb spudgering, bloodlusted, eating and drinking dumb nigga, pretty much. But to go and push on to the next, in conclusion, to go ahead and surely wrap this up with everything they said, I don't fully agree with. I understand his talks. I understand Freya at the end changing up for all her doing splurge of talking about vengeance is cool. But if she forgave Kratos, she moved on. I feel like the purpose of trying to change and then actually doing that, then sends you getting fresh vengeance. And even the words of the creator, such as main director, showcasing all this different stuff together in a very cool cinematic and fresh stake of a way, was a solid way to end it and conclude that shit. For me personally. I understand it might not feel bad, but it isn't like if Hanzo Asashi or Trunks or Shorty from Kill Bill was out here bolting back to back on getting vengeance and doing what they were doing for the saving of themselves or people around them and then changing. She wanted it so bad and it finally came into play of stopping, and she didn't feel like she needed to break him to be whole in this case, in a sense. And so that's why I personally disagree. And I think someone like Thor has a good character overall because, say, instance of his comparison to Kratos, and it wasn't just said 2 times, it's always been showcased that what Thor does is literally the pinnacle of being a soldier to his general or commander, being like, oh, you want me to shoot? Tell me how far. Tell me to kill? How you want me to do it? He's relentless. He's a rug beater of giants. And this is showcased in how he talks about the Jotunar to a Jotun. I'll revel in killing you like I did your race. He does not care. I feel like everything he said, again, there's some things that could have been better showcased. Better said, I understand his opinion. I really do. If you watching this, I mess with what you're saying. I just don't overarchingly think it's a solemn sense of talk because there's multiple things that were showcased in better form together and replicated from the other game. And I feel like it was already a solemn game and everything that it was. And that's pretty much it. I've never made an hour long ass response to someone like this, so it is what it is. I could talk more about it, but I'm not trying to make multiple parts. This is fine enough for me. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Go watch his videos. Tell me what you guys think about his opinion. Again, that person to go ahead and say his name again, and within the case of his video, which is 25 minutes and 1 second from the Gammelier. Mess with the stuff in the case of how he did it for the most part. Maybe there'll be more. I'll have to agree with him on this, but I might like his content from the rest. Go subscribe to him, like, comment, do whatever. Do not harass the dude. Just say what's up. He's more bigger than me, probably bigger than me than ever. I'm only at 55 subscribers, but you know, gotta grow your tree somehow. But with that being said, I love y'all. I appreciate you guys for watching. Peace out, mommy. Love y'all.